Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Sophia, your host. What's it like to work as a chaplain in prison? What sort of offenders do you meet? What stories do they tell? Are they interested in reforming themselves? And how can religion help them, not just to survive prison life, but also to overcome personal weaknesses so that they are able to thrive on the outside as well? We speak with Imam Yasin Dwyer. He's a chaplain at Correctional Services Canada. He'll give us an inside look at the people in our federal prisons and the religious and pastoral services that make a difference. Imam Yasin, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you've been a chaplain for 12 years. You are the only full-time Muslim chaplain in the federal penitentiary system. How did you end up there?
I responded to an advertisement for the services of a Muslim chaplain to work with Muslim offenders who are in the federal system in the Ontario region. And I applied through my faith community, the Islam Care Center based in Ottawa. They sponsored my application, and I was chosen among a group of candidates to provide religious and spiritual services to primarily Muslim offenders at federal prisons in the Ontario region.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that you don't only deal with Muslim inmates now, but you also deal with other inmates as well, of other faiths or perhaps of no faith.
Yes, because I am a chaplain of the Muslim faith, I see myself as a universal chaplain. However, because of the unique needs that Muslim offenders may have, unique needs revolving around diet, unique needs revolving around worship space, access to sacred space, I do primarily deal with Muslim offenders. Mm-hmm. As you know, Islam is a religion of practice. It's an orthopraxy rather than perhaps an orthodoxy. So therefore, there are a lot of things that Muslims do. So in the prison context, that doesn't change. So we have a lot of accommodation issues to be concerned about.
So things like halal meals and that
absolutely.
Sort of thing. Okay.
So I can make sure that Muslim offenders have access to halal meals, have access to sacred scripture, have access to special event celebrations such as the two Eids that we celebrate, their Eid after Ramadan, their Eid after the Hajj pilgrimage season. So I do my best to make sure that the Correctional Service of Canada is aware of the needs of Muslim offenders who are in prisons within the Ontario region.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you also go into cells and speak to prisoners? How does it work?
Absolutely. It's very flexible. I work primarily
or do they come to your office?
Both.
Okay.
I, as a member of the staff, I have access to inmates wherever they may be, unless there may be some extra security concern. But my work is primarily done in the chapel, which is our sacred space. This is where we gather in groups, where we can discuss some religious and spiritual issues. I do have an office as well, where inmates can come and we can have one-on-one time. I do have access to the ranges where the offenders live, just to speak with them about anything really, anything that may be on their mind. And also I have access to those areas that may be restricted, such as segregation units, where inmates have, for whatever reason, been separated from the population. So I have access to deal, to speak, and to reason with offenders wherever they may be.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like you have access even to the maximum security offenders.
Yes, well, okay. I work at all levels of security. Although my office is based at a maximum security institution, I do visit a variety of institutions in the region, and that includes maximum, medium, and minimum.
Mm-hmm. So were you ever fearful of your safety?
No, I was never. I've never been fearful of my safety. Okay. In fact, I see all of those men and women that I work with as my brothers and sisters, and I hope they see me the same way. And I've never had a feeling of concern for my safety because I am a chaplain. Although I'm aware of security issues, I'm aware of where I am working, a prison.
I've known some prison guards have said they've been fearful of their safety. So when you say that you're not fearful of your safety, that, that's surprising to me.
Yes. Well, again, I am a chaplain. And while I do have, I'm aware of the environment, I'm aware that I am working in a prison, my role in the prison is not an adversarial role. Perhaps if someone was a security guard, well, their role is pretty much maintaining order. Sometimes that could manifest itself in a very aggressive way. So there is an adversarial relationship between, or sometimes an adversarial relationship between offenders and security staff. But I am really there for one purpose, and that is to promote the best of spirituality, the best of religion, and therefore the chapel itself is seen as safe space where no one feels threatened, no one feels unsafe. Rather, you feel free to be able to express yourself, to speak about those things that perhaps you'd feel uncomfortable to speak about with others. The chapel is a place of peace amidst this adversarial, perhaps very difficult environment that we call a prison.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said that people come and speak to you about things that perhaps they might feel uncomfortable speaking to others about. Can you give us an idea of what sort of concerns people bring to you?
Well, of course, many who have entered prison, especially those who are serving a very long sentence, there is understandably a lot of anxiety concerning that which they have left behind, particularly family. Mothers, fathers, children, spouses. There's a lot of anxiety concerning the welfare, the well-being of those whom they have left behind. So I've had a lot of very, very difficult conversations about the feeling of loss, the feeling of longing, especially when it comes to high holidays, special moments. There are a lot of things that offenders want to speak about. There is a significant degree of pain among many offenders, not only concerning their incarceration, but also concerning their offense, because there are victims left behind as well. And there are many offenders that are feeling much regret concerning their offense, concerning their crime, especially if it relates to violence or it has produced a lot of pain in victims, lasting pain. So all of these things are discussed in the chapel with chaplains, and I've had a lot of discussions like that and tried to help offenders navigate their way through that pain in order to do their time well and indeed to make sense of their incarceration, or do their time well and not make the time do them.
And do you sometimes deal with offenders who are perhaps unrepentant?
There are a handful, of course, and the prison really, or the prison population, is a microcosm of the population on the outside. You have a variety of psychologies to deal with, a variety of people, a variety of inclinations. So there are some that are inclined to empathy. There are some who are not. There are some who are inclined to spirituality, and there are others who are not. So there is a variety. However, working as a chaplain, you get an idea of who indeed is inclined to empathy and spirituality, because the chaplains usually are the ones whom those who at least have some inclination to spiritual practice, they will come to.
So and you don't actually go in and speak to someone when they're reluctant to speak to you. It's more like they volunteer and come speak to you.
Absolutely, because the chapel has a variety of programs. So if someone wants to participate in a chapel program, they themselves will take the initiative and come to the program. Yes.
Imam Yasin, are people interested in reforming themselves? Do you see that people are inclining towards change?
Those whom I come into contact with are very much inclined to change. And again, because of the religious and spiritual nature of the work that we do within chaplaincy, you find that those who are attracted are those that at least have some inclination to speak to themselves, right? Because if chaplaincy is anything, chaplaincy is giving giving offenders, at least in prison chaplaincy, the opportunity to be able to speak to themselves and ask themselves certain difficult questions concerning their actions and concerning the result of their negative actions, and to give them ways in which that they can improve and they can use spirituality in order to become complete human beings and become functioning citizens. So we
how
find
do
a
you help
lot.
them to use their spirituality to become better people?
Well, of course, I mentioned talking to yourself. You know, I think in general, a lot of people have difficulty speaking to themselves, because oftentimes when we speak to ourselves, we realize that there's a real monster inside of us, you know. So it's not only those who are in prison that need to speak to themselves. However, perhaps it's much more apparent working with those who are incarcerated that indeed there needs to be a process of self-reflection. This self-reflection, if done correctly and if done with the guidance and supervision of a person who is a professional in religion, can really help people to be able to discover things about themselves and be able to make an effective change that is not temporary but rather is lasting. Because, you know, spirituality is really beyond, I think, what a lot of people wish to acknowledge is important in the growth of a human being. Because as Muslims, at least, we understand that we have different dimensions of personality, right? We have our nafs, which is like our soul, which is our personality, our inclinations, our emotions, our inclination to happiness, to sadness, our soul. We have our ruh, which is our spirit, which is the divine spark or the divine electricity that every human being has, regardless of who you may be or what religion you may ascribe to. Everyone has a ruh, but everyone also has what's called a qalb. Everyone has a heart. Not necessarily the physical heart in our body, but rather we have a spiritual heart. Well, these three have to work together in a fluid way. And we can look at the Islamic personality as like a radio, right? You have the nafs is like the body of the radio. Some radios are big, some radios are small, some radios have really good bass, some radios are pretty shaky, but the nafs or the personality is like the radio. But then you have the ruh, which this is called spirit, which is like the electricity, right? The electricity that makes the radio run. No radio can be alive without having that electricity. But the qalb itself, the heart, the spiritual heart, is like the cord. It's the cord that informs the personality of your spirituality. So in prison, right? In prison, this effort in order to clean the filter, to purify the filter, to purify the heart is very, very apparent. And that kind of work is the work that chaplaincy is all about, to purify the filter so that you indeed can allow your spiritual nature to inform your personality, to inform your emotions, so that indeed you can become what you are meant to become, a servant of God, someone who is conscious of God, who is aware of God, and who acts in accordance to that which God has willed for you. So this really is the focus of chaplaincy.
Very beautifully put. Imam Dwyer, you're doing very important and commendable work. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break. When we return, we will look at the Nigerian extremist group Boko Haram.